We are on page 114. We're looking at the character of the age. And we did not go through the list here. That's what we're going to look at. We're going to look at paragraph 263 especially, but we'll review paragraph 262 as well. We want to remember that we are, let me get my pointer on here. We've looked at study church history, preparation, Ephesus, Smyrna. We're up here in the Pergamos age. Pergamos, we want to remember this is for those who are wanting to really understand the significance of church history. I think this is where the really significant stuff, the more exciting stuff that is significant comes about, because there are some radical changes that were really going on here. Everything else, it's sort of smoldering in the background. The pagan influence is smoldering in the background. I like that word, smoldering. Okay, it's like a coals getting ready to flare up into a full bore fire. And that's what's going to happen in this age. From here for the next 1,000 years, there's just a tremendous conflict that will sort of break open when you get to the Reformation. And that's something that a lot of people are aware of. How many people have heard of the Reformation? Okay, the Reformation, that's the time when the Catholic Church was so messed up that finally, with the advent of more availability of scriptures and greater learning, greater understanding, things opened up more than the Reformers. Luther with the Lutheran churches today, John Calvin with the Reformed churches, they're called the Reformed churches, and then the Episcopalians. All those started to break out. The next major moment after that Reformation is going to be here in America with the American Revolution, because the American Revolution is intimately tied to biblical Christianity and the church becoming free to be able to operate. Churches, I should say, becoming free to operate. So these are, if anything, I would say these are probably your most major points in church history. Constantine and the legalization of the church, the Reformation, and the American Revolution are your biggest moments, in my opinion. Okay, so we're looking here at Pergamos. Come on. It should be clicking and going. Okay. We have this timeline of Pergamos. We're looking at, sure. We're looking at the edict. No, this is I should correct this here. We're going to say the Edict of Milan. Okay. This is going to deal with the Donatists. That's why it says that up there on the screen. Okay, so Constantine the Great, nice key figure. He is the emperor of the Roman Empire. He likes to bring his capital over to Istanbul. Actually, no, I'm sorry, it was Byzantium at the time. Later became Istanbul. We all remember that famous song, right? It's Istanbul or Constantinople. Is it Istanbul or Constantinople? Okay. So anyhow, so he's going to do that. But Constantine is this major figure because he's the one who's going to, in the Edict of Milan, in the city of Milan, he is going to take away religious persecution. And this is going to benefit all religions, not just Christianity, but it was primarily aimed at stopping the persecutions against Christians. So Constantine the Great, as you see in paragraph 262, he did not make Christianity the official of the Roman Empire during his reign. This is going to come. Another emperor following him is going to make it the official religion of the Roman Empire. That was going to take place in 380 AD, and you can see that at the top of the screen over here, 380 AD. That's when it's going to be officially declared state religion. However, he played a pivotal role in the Edict of Milan, which was a significant milestone in the history of religious tolerance and freedom. In 313 AD, Emperor Constantine, along with his co-emperor Licinius, issued the edict which granted religious tolerance to all religions, not just Christianity. The Christianity was obviously the intended beneficiary. If you look at the big idea in that box there, the state connection looked like an open door, but it was an anchor that was tied to the church to sink it. This is one of the greatest troubles that you have with Christianity in the church is any kind of dependence on the government for anything. We love the government. We want the government to do its job that is granted to it and given to it by God. Government is the agent of God for the world apart from Christianity. We, you might say, form a subculture within the world, and we operate by a special set of rules. The Bible, okay? We, for instance, do not go out and execute people for bad doctrine or for some offense that was made, okay? When we have somebody slap us in the cheek, what are we supposed to do? Turn the other cheek. That they might spite that one also. And that's the rule that we operate. We operate by the law of love. People who don't want to operate within that sphere, well, they don't get away with anything. That's what government is given for by God. And so that's why you'll have government having capital punishment and things like that. And so, so the idea is that we do not want to have the government mixing with us. Now, having the emperor be in favor of this and moving towards influencing things seems like a good idea. Wouldn't you like it if the government was giving, nice favors to Christianity? I would just like to have them treat us fairly. Fortunately, in America, this was the first government that said that churches and the state were independent, and the churches were given the freedom to operate according to how they will. When you get to have the church membership lessons, everybody here has had them. Got a couple we'll start doing soon. But one of the things we'll be pointing out is that we have a bylaws for the church, and you have to have these documents to be able to let the state know that you're a real organization. And so you have bylaws, and in the bylaws, we have methods for dealing with problems in the church. And so if you were to take a brother or sister from church to court, the judge would say to you, what do your church bylaws say? And that has actually happened. Now, if you happen to kill your brother or sister, that's a different thing. That's taken over by the state. They have their interests. So you don't just say for all things, the bylaws take place, but there's that separation between the church and state, and that's the way it's supposed to be. So, so paragraph 360 or 263 there on page 114, the role of Constantine in facilitating this change established the blending of the state with the church. Constantine's involvement in the affairs of the church can be characterized by several key actions and policies. So you would figure, oh, it's nice to have a politician on your side so that he can give you some side benefits, and he can cut you some slack, and he can take advantage of that. No, you don't want that. Let's look at what happened here with Constantine. Okay, so first of all, and some of these things are going to sound positive, Constantine's personal conversion to Christianity and his favorable treatment of the Christian church further encouraged the growth of Christianity within the empire. Oh, the emperor's Christian now? Let's all do the same thing. Let's follow our leader. Sounds interesting. Nice to have that kind of influence. Christians were allowed to practice their faith openly, and enjoy protection from state-sponsored persecution. Now, that was good to have the lack of persecution, but remember, persecution also has a way of trying people's spirits. It has a way of purifying us. Remember, I said this morning in the message that a lot of times we have an immature spirituality, and the only way we discover it a lot of times is when we hit rock bottom on something, or when we go through a terrible trial, and we discover, oh, I guess I wasn't as strong as I thought I was. You know, people are willing to cut out for all kinds of reasons rather than pursuing obeying God. Yeah, Brother Joe. Microphone over here. It is.
I was just going to say that persecution also purifies, because if you're going to stand during the persecution, you're only going to stand if you really believe what you believe, if you're not just along for the ride, or because it's
Yeah.
popular, or because it's going to give you some kind of economic or social advantage. So, yeah, when persecution comes, that's when the churches are actually really the strongest.
Yeah. Yeah. We are so desirous of getting the gospel and getting a lot of people in church. Got to remember that, yeah, not everybody that's coming out to church is good for the church. They might be people siphoning off the strength of the church because people are catering to them. And sometimes what you got to do is you got to let somebody go, as unfortunate as that is. We think of that as unloving. No, it's very loving in that we're very sad over it. It makes us very sad and we grieve over it. But um, that person that could be, causing a disturbance or whatever, might be distracting us from getting to the other soul that is genuinely interested in the Lord. So persecution is it's nice to not be persecuted. I like not having troubles. Okay. I enjoy that, but it's having persecution, having struggles is not a bad thing in and of itself. Okay. Next bullet point there. Constantine played a role in convening and presiding over the First Ecumenical Council of Nicaea in 325 AD. That's only 12 years after the persecution ends. Remember that there was a general pressure in the church to try to get unity and try to get people to have official doctrine, to articulate doctrine, um, and to rally behind a leader and to recognize the authority of a bishop in a church. But it's pressing the church into having a pope, essentially, and archbishops. Okay, so the Council of Nicaea was called. This council aimed to address the theological controversies of the time. It's like, okay, we got these controversies. Well, Constantine comes and says, well, I'm going to step in here. I've got this power. I've got this authority. I'll just call a council together. We'll bring people together and we'll everybody hash this out and try to figure it out. And they particularly aimed at the Arian controversy. It is very interesting to me. This Arian controversy, this is one of those theological things that it's good for you to know. Remember, there are a bunch of things I'll say, yeah, you're not going to remember this necessarily. Don't feel bad if you don't remember this. But if this is one of the things, if you're a good church history student, this is one that is good to remember, is the Arian controversy. And it had to do with the deity of Christ, whether he was created or not. And the big thing is that this Arian controversy has repeated itself down through the ages. It's always a problem. And there's one particular cult that is especially known for maintaining the Arian controversy. It is anybody? Jehovah's Witnesses. Yes, they deny the deity of Christ. They say he was a created being. Okay, so it's what's especially interesting. I tell a story about how I was with one of the Egyptian brothers years ago, and I was talking to him about church, and we were going through some discipleship stuff, and I was referring to the Jehovah's Witnesses and what they believe, because he was encountering some of them, and I thought it was so interesting. He just blurted out, "This is Arius. This is Arius." And then a few weeks ago, I was visiting with Jonathan and Samuel's father. They go to church up up on Sip Avenue in Jersey City. I had a little time extra. I was visiting with him, and I was talking about this, and he goes, Arius, this is Arius, and totally different church, and I just thought that was so funny. That's the way you put it. And the thing is, we were talking about just the nature of language. And I said, well, yes, well, we say Aryan because that's the ending you put on words like American, Canadian, no, not Canadian, okay, German. So it's an ending you put on to indicate a person citizenry. So yeah, so we say Aryan, they say Arius. They just say Arius. So it was a hot issue. It was something that was definitely a problem. They did definitely come out with a statement regarding the deity of Christ that was great. Okay. Here's the problem, though. It was something that was organized by the government. As good as the issue was, as important, as significant as the issue was, nevertheless, you've now got somebody from government who is using his authority to bring this about. Do we want that? Do we want a government official being utilized to help churches out? In other words, let's put it this way. Let me state it this way. Would you like President Biden to abide over church issues that churches are going through and disputes? Would you want President Biden to do that? Okay. Now, which president would you ever like to do that? None. There's no president. Okay. Some of the presidents have a better testimony of faith than others, but I'll tell you, there's one thing that is sad about political leaders is that they are so caught up in trying to understand their role and function. They're all shy on doctrine. George Bush was pretty good with a bunch of doctrine, okay, but not pure. There's no president that in our history that I would ever welcome to preside over any kind of church matters. One you like, one you don't like, doesn't matter. Because what happens is if you establish the principle that you have a political figure doing this, well, they're out of office in 4 years or 8 years. And the next one comes in and you have no guarantee of anything. That's why each church is responsible. We are responsible for maintaining the faith and making sure we study things out. Okay, so it says, by presiding over the council, Constantine demonstrated this interest as emperor in resolving theological issues within the church and maintaining unity. This conflict is going to just get hotter and hotter as time goes on. Eventually, well, what's going to happen with the fall of Rome is that the Bishop of Rome is going to step in with his authority in the vacuum of the political authority collapsing, and then his power is going to increase. He's then going to move to claim authority in all spiritual affairs, and it will be a later pope who is going to then claim authority in temporal affairs, and that he's the emperor of the secular world as well as the spiritual world. Yeah, Brother Joe.
Would it therefore be fair to say that when Constantine called that Nicene Council, could we call that a proto-papacy?
Loosely, I would say it. I would say it loosely. Yeah, it's if it's not proto, it is it's putting a spark to the gas. Okay. Nextly, churches enjoyed privileges such as tax exemptions and the return of confiscated property. Constantine also donated resources to construct churches and support the clergy. Oh, that'd be nice. Get a chunk of change given by the government, right? Yeah, no, don't do that. Don't take the money. Don't take the money. This support from the imperial government bolstered the church's influences and resources. But now you've got this empowering the church. Always remember, whenever a politician goes to do favors, it is always with strings attached, one way or another. You do not want to be obligated to the government. Only on those things that are established by law. Now, we say, well, yeah, but don't we enjoy tax exemption today? Yes, we do. But that's only because there is a separation between church and state. In Constantine's case, It was, oh, there's a figure of speech for it I can't think of, but the idea of one hand washing the other, you know, you scratch my back, I scratch yours. There was a social connection there. Now we have the reason we have tax exemption as a church is because we are recognized as the domain that is not under the government. Government has no responsibility in this domain. Likewise, we are not eligible to take benefits from a government. But you say, yeah, but what'd you say about politicians offering something? Yeah, if they offer something, they say, oh, this is nothing official. You don't have to do anything. Yeah, no, you always owe something to a politician. Yes, Miss Nancy.
Yeah, this comes into question where if you keep taking from the government, then they have a right to tell you what you can and cannot teach
Right.
and preach. And we've seen some of the policies in our society today, that they do not agree with the Bible. But once you become beholden to the government, you've given up a lot of your independence and your rights and your way of doing things that you know is the right way. I know that this sort of came into question with the Ocean Grove problem with the city of Neptune. And what they'll do, they'll have people test things out to see how it plays out in court, where they had, gay people want to get married on the boardwalk in the pavilion. And I think Neptune has more and more control over that whole Methodist camp because they've accepted so much from the government. That used to be a little independent town that they wouldn't even allow people to drive cars on Sunday through there. They would not allow liquor. I mean, they didn't even have traffic lights for a while. They wanted the purity of Sundays kept, and they were able to make those determinations because they were independent of the government. But when that changed, they really gave up a lot of their what do they call it, differential advantage?
Yeah.
And they're paying a high price for that now.
Yeah.
And mostly that great auditorium. Yes, it is used for religious gatherings, but it's also used for a lot of secular things too.
Yeah.
And when they've had secular groups come in, or even high school graduations, they made them cover the signs, anything that had to do with Christianity, the cross, holiness to the Lord. That whole building was erected to bring glory and honor to God. And now the city officials tell them, oh no, you've got to cover all that up. How could we let anybody see anything that glorifies God from the outside? So it's really very sad. We have tax exemption because the Constitution says church and state are separate. And politicians today who say, well, there's a wall of separation, and that means all Christians are muzzled. They can't say anything about the government, but that's not true. We still are citizens, and we have a right to vote, and we have a right to have an opinion. But we just don't want any favors from the government, because then we're giving up our independence.
Yeah, Brother Stanley.
Before Nancy lets go of the microphone, the question is actually through you to her. You just reminded me, years ago, my memory is not real clear. Didn't Shelton College have trouble with the government down there?
Yeah, they did. Now I know a couple of things about that are particularly not quite applied, but go ahead, Nancy, if you have some memories.
I think they railroaded Dr. McIntyre on several points. They kept trying to say that he was using this as a conference center. He did have religious conferences there, and the cost was so low. He wanted to keep it low because he wanted to encourage families to come and, have a wholesome vacation and attend the religious meetings. And he'd have speakers come in from all over the world. But they kept trying to get him, nothing new under the sun, on technicalities to bring baseless charges against him. They would say, oh, well, you're violating these building codes. So he would raise money and he would fix up the properties. And then they'd come in and say, oh, now you have to tear all that out because the sheetrock thickness isn't up to code. Like they kept trying to bleed him until finally, he was just so out of funds. They gave him trouble over the college. I think you can call yourself a certain thing and grant degrees, but they said, no, and that school existed for many years, granting degrees, not having any problem. But when the state wanted him out of there, he became a target. First, they tried to get him off the radio, and he was not one to give up easily. So he took a ship out because this was down in Cape May. He took it out on the ocean just after whatever the
3 mile limit. Yeah.
yeah, the frequency that he had. There's like a mile limit or something, 3 mile limit, and he broadcast off the ship
Yeah.
his religious show, which was really good.
Oh yeah, didn't the press call it a pirate ship he was operating?
Yeah, they kept mischaracterizing him. And you know something? All of this publicity that he had, that the press thought was so negative, and they were going to tear this man up. That's how our family found out about that college. And that's how my sister started attending there. And that's how we heard the gospel. So what they meant for evil, God meant for
Yeah.
good, because he, with all this attention drawn to that school, we would have never heard of that. We would have
Yeah.
never known that such a place existed if it weren't for all the negative publicity that he had. And I think many other people came to Christ as a result of what he was doing down there too.
And we need to very much zealously protect these freedoms, and our voting should actually reflect that, because there is a constant pressure. You hear about the problems with the government getting involved with censorship, and this is a big issue in Congress, and it's in committees and being debated and argued and things like that. We need to have freedom of speech. And there is a pressure. I'm not shocked. You knew it was coming to this, where they openly espouse the idea that only responsible speech should be free. Okay, yeah. And who decides what's responsible speech? And so there's a lot of censorship that's being pushed out there, and the companies are responding to that. Nancy has seen that there on Facebook, there are people, friends of ours, that are saying, I had this Bible verse, and Facebook, they locked him out, took it down, and it was just a Bible verse. And this is not one isolated instance. There's a number of things like that. And so in this whole environment of censorship that's being argued, that government should be able to cancel somebody's hate speech, this is what it's definitely directly leading to, is we're being considered, having hate speech. And there are people who will accuse the Bible as being a book of hate speech, because it deals with problems and deals with it quite frankly. And so you've got this constant pressure that's on. And yes, there's pressures on the churches. I believe out in California, they can't go against public policy, and this has been used to try to shut them down for dealing with pro-life issues. Back in 2016, in that particular election, there was a lot of talk about how that churches need to evolve, and they need to change their standards to comport with modern society. Okay, and there was a particular presidential candidate that was chiefly saying that. Her initials, I don't need to repeat. Once I said that, right? Okay. And so what happened was, it was the idea of, we need to celebrate diversity. I mean, perversity. And we needed to upgrade things about pro-life. And they were openly saying churches needed to get with the times. You do not want the government pressuring that. You don't want that kind of influence. Now, yes, we are tax exempt. Some people make a mistake. I should mention this, because some people, they don't realize it. That does not mean that I am tax exempt. I have to pay income taxes also. Okay. But the church is not. The church organization is not taxed. When you when you hear people talking about something being a 50c3 tax exempt organization. Okay, there are other things, 501(c)(1) and 2 and 4 and 5, and there's for special, specific cases. Churches are considered under the IRS code 501 section C3, 501(c)(3). Okay. And so when you get a church set up, you send a letter to the IRS and you say, we are a tax exempt organization. Notice that I did not say that we apply for tax exemption. There is no application. When you hear that a church has this tax exempt status, that means that the IRS is recognizing it. They cannot establish what is one. They say you are declaring yourself a religious organization. They say, okay, if you say so, and all this means is that your name is the church's name is there, because if anybody needs to do what do you call it? Exemption. When you go to claim, when you go to itemize your exemptions, okay. If you say, well, I give to a church to say, oh yeah, which one? Oh yeah, we know that they're there. They are not determining that we are tax exempt. They have no standards. They have no definition, because then they would be creating a religion, is what they would be doing. So it's an interesting kind of thing, but it's all part and parcel of how we are zealously concerned about keeping church and state separate. And so the idea of the government there, under that bulletin point about churches enjoyed privileges such as tax exemptions, in that case, it was not the case like today, where we have separation of church and state. Okay.
Pastor?
Yes, sir.
Yes, I just wanted to add, I believe it's the same candidate years ago while campaigning. I believe I remember watching her on TV, and out of her mouth, believe it or not, came, we need to change the Constitution because it's outdated for how the world has evolved.
Yeah. This I'll tell you, the Constitution was the product of a couple of thousand years of people struggling with government. It was not born out of nothing, and truly people are the same all through the ages. So no, it does not need to evolve. Okay. Next bullet point. Constantine occasionally intervened in internal church disputes, attempting to reconcile conflicting factions. And I could just imagine being in his position. He's like, well, I got this authority. I should try to help out the church. Oh, guys, stop quibbling over there. Why don't you get this problem taken care of? Now keep the government out. Constantine issued an imperial decree in 321 AD that declared Sunday as a day of rest throughout the empire. Although the decree was not explicitly a Christian measure, it accommodated the Christian practice of gathering for worship on Sundays, further solidifying the significance of the Christian day of worship. Now, you might come across Seventh-day Adventists today, who were especially founded by Ellen G. White, those churches, and there's a reason why they say Seventh-day Adventists. Okay, before Ellen G. White, there was an Adventist movement, people that were concerned about the end times, and so it was a very big subject in Christianity in early America in the 1800s. And so there were churches that were known for their eschatology and promoting the return of the Lord, the teaching of the return of the Lord. They were Adventists. They were saying Christ is coming back at such and such a time. Well, he didn't come back, but so you had them. They were concerned about the Advent, the return of Christ. And then you had also Seventh Day, a pressure for Seventh Day kind of things, because in the Ten Commandments, God rested on the seventh day. Christians started worshiping on the first day of the week as a figure of the resurrection, because Christ was raised on the first day of the week. So they were regularly worshiping that day. So So when Constantine comes along, he's just recognizing this and saying, okay, let's make Sunday a day of worship. But Ellen G. White and others, they'll say, squawk, squawk. Constantine invented Sunday worship, and it is a mark of the Antichrist, the mark of the beast. And they will actually say there were Seventh-day Adventist teachings that said anybody who worships on the seventh day, I'm sorry, anybody who worships on the first day on Sunday, that they're Antichrist, and these churches are Antichrist. And so they had that as a thing about this. No, Constantine did not establish that as a day of worship. Now, got to keep in mind that if there were other people doing the worship on Sunday, that this would be in honor of Sol Invictus, and so there was pagan mixture that was going on there, but it was really not a thing like that. But it has now been turned into by some a cry that, oh, you must be Antichrist if you're worshiping on the first day.
Yeah, I always wondered about Seventh-day Adventists, how they explain away if they think that we are part of the Antichrist because we worship on Sunday, then why do they rent out their buildings to Baptists and other denominations who are in need of a meeting place because they don't have their own building? Why would they allow their building to be used and collect money from people who they think are the Antichrist? Why wouldn't they say, oh, no, we can't condone this.
Yeah.
You can't use our building on Sundays because that would be supporting what you're doing.
Yeah, because people as people are really interested in money. Yeah. Noel's got it over here.
I mean, it's so obvious that
This is the fourth time you've been here, Noel. You got it down. You understand what
I mean, can't they see the blatant hypocrisy there? It's so obvious.
Yeah, I
Because
don't know.
this is their pet doctrine.
Yeah. Yeah, we've had groups that have asked, can we rent space in the building? If you remember, First Filipino Baptist, which is now Global Harvest, when they were coming out of Jersey City, they needed a place to meet. They asked, would you consider renting space out? And I said, well, no. I said two reasons. Number one, if you're not like us, we're not going to rent it out. Number two, okay, if you're going to meet here and you're like us, how can we dare charge you? So they met with us and we just shared expenses. We split the bills at the time. And they were very much related. Julie Tabukbuk was very instrumental in helping them. So Global Harvest is here because People's Baptist, gave them a nice place to meet and stuff like that. We actually considered trying to join the churches together at one time, and but they decided to just go separately like that. Okay, let's see. Next bullet point. Through various benefits, pagans were encouraged to join the new religion because there were now all these different benefits. The pagans were now like, hey, good idea. Why don't you come on in and join? Now they were coming in to join for the benefits, not because of a change of doctrine, not because Christianity was found to be superior and they needed to get rid of the old ways and take on Christianity. So now you are going to begin having pagans come into the church. We want to remember that there are two veins of theology that are going on. Some people look at what we have as Christians was corrupted to some of the practices that are out there in churches today. No, what had happened was there was a pagan element that was counterfeiting, that Satan had us counterfeit to God's religion, namely with the Jews, and that was growing up at the same time. And that corruption of true faith from the time of Noah, even dating all the way back to there, that corruption is what is now being brought in because as an original counterfeit to true faith, it has some similarities. So it's not like our views were being corrupted and twisted and misinterpreted. No, we got other views that are being brought in alongside the churches at that time. And so it starts with Constantine. It's now popular because of all the benefits. It gets later on made official. And that's the next aggravation for this. Okay, let me see. says, now many would join to fulfill social needs without true regard for the spiritual needs that arise from conviction for sin. Social compliance became a great motivator for joining. With the influx of those who were not genuinely converted came an influx of pagan notions. Nextly, Constantine's patronage and support of Christianity influenced the development of a close relationship between the church and state. It was because of his personal connection. This relationship evolved over the centuries and had significant implications for both the church's influence on politics and the state's involvement in religious matters. And so finally, paragraph 264, there on the top of page 115. While some of these effects might seem favorable, the partnership of the church with the state also brought problems. So that's why we're big on, we don't take favors from the state. How do we get things done? By your tithes and offerings. This is how it's done. We're not going to take the state money. Okay? And now it's not a state thing, but we're not going to go out and have yard sales either. Okay, we're not depending on the outside culture. Now, I said before, I made reference to how we are sort of like a subculture within the world. Actually, we're a superculture. Okay, we are above the world, not beneath the world. We're above the world. And we are here because we make it be here. Okay, and as I always say, if somebody can't support God's work, okay, if the church membership can't support God's work, then the church membership doesn't deserve to have God's work. Okay, does God absolutely have to have us? No, he doesn't absolutely have to have us. He can let somebody else take us over. Okay, but God doesn't need us, but he happily uses us and lets us join in the work. See, I did that with you, Noel. I said, could you get the cables off the thing there? I was letting you get to play with us. Okay, Joel was helping out with setting up on Friday and stuff like that. And as I say, I have these nice toys. Let's go play. That's my way of saying we're going to go do some work together. You didn't have to do that. You got to do it. Like we tell our kids, you don't have to eat your vegetables. You get to eat your vegetables. We're here because we're all doing our part to make it be here. Yeah, Brother Tone.
It's interesting that you mentioned about we are not a subculture but a super culture, which is correct. If we were not around, then you would be removing the restraining power over extreme criminality, but the devil will reign. And so, and the standards we have, it's not ours, it's God's standard. In fact, because Israel decided to follow the world, they opted for a human king rather than remain under the kingship of Jehovah.
Yeah.
And that's why the prophet and Judge Samuel was arguing with God that why do we allow them to resort to have a human king when you are our king already?
Yeah.
But God has a purpose that would usher in the period by which they can develop a human super leader to be the Antichrist. And that would really bring back not only
actually, there would be two human super leaders.
Oh yes,
the others, but the true one and the counterfeit one.
Yeah. Yes, and it's amazing that the prophetic language of Scripture is the one that brings about history or the data that we experience today. That's been prophesied before. So how could it not be? How could that be? Because it's a perfect standard. That should be what we're following.
Yes. Yeah, the perfect standard. Amen. Amen. Okay. The next section, I'm going to wait till the next time. The oppressed become the oppressors with state sanction. And basically what that's going to be referring to is how, the churches were oppressed during that Smyrna age. You give them state sanction, they're going to turn into being the oppressors. And that's a common thing that happens. We're watching that today. In fact, we're talking about the church being the restraining factor in the world. we're salt and light for the world. We're preserving the world. We're witnessing what is happening uh, as Christian standards and as the church is becoming co-opted, and as you see Christianity being pressed into its own corner. The cry is, yeah, you got freedom of worship, you just don't have freedom of religion. Okay, meaning, yeah, you can go worship in your little house, but don't you say anything outside. There's an agency that are pressing freedom from religion rather than freedom of religion. So we'll be seeing about that effect next time. Okay, other comments, other questions?
Just one.
Yes, sir.
It occurred to me that some of these points in time in church history, once in a while, have amusing names. And I thought to myself, I can't wait until we get to the diet of worms.
Yeah, the diet of worms. Yes.
First time I heard that, I was like, what?
Yeah. Yeah. In the Reformation, yeah, that'll be fun. It's don't worry, it's not a vegan diet thing. Okay. Very good.